Okay, I haven't prepared anything, so these are all spontaneous. I missed some important points when I'm talking about this topic. Transnational feminism is different from international feminism. Why? How? Anybody wants to address that? Why we say transnational feminism rather than international? Because it's a new concept about feminism. In the past, we used to have international feminism. Yes?
If I say correctly, I think that international feminism was something from the approach of up to down and comes from United Nations, mostly about the section who has already organized in United Nations. But when we are talking about transnational feminism, we are talking about the movement and institution, independent institution of feminism. Nobody are attached by the official, for example, organization, and the relation, the interactive relation is mostly about being together, looking at the common discrimination. Mm-hmm. I think the most positive of the theory of intersectional discrimination is transnational feminism. Part of the people look at the intersectional, sorry for my English, but look at this like sometimes even they forget the feminism. But transnational feminism reminds us our common discrimination among the feminism, neglecting that where we are from, where we are attached, which organization introduced us. It is something spontaneously. Through the feminism, like sisterhood, but among agency of feminism, to organize themselves.
Okay. You're talking about different aspects of it, but actually we don't need to say one is better than the other. It's a matter of the timing of it. Transnational feminism is kind of a product of globalization. It happened because of the new technology that made interaction and connection and network building much easier than in the past. In the past, we didn't have any choice necessarily for transnational feminism because we couldn't go beyond the borders, right? Now the world has become rather borderless, even though the political borders, the geopolitical borders are there, but people have moved beyond that, and they can because of the new technology. So it's a matter of also the context, the historical context, but then in practice, you're right. There are some positive aspects that we didn't have in international feminism. I'm kind of speaking also in defense of international feminists because they didn't mean anything bad or negative, they were not necessarily domineering, but it happened that they had more resources. The third world women did not have as much resources. The first world, the white feminists, had more resources, they were also more advanced, right? And they were living usually in a more democratic societies. They could have congresses, like recently I finished a long article about Sadiqa Dolatabadi, and she's a good example because she was the first Iranian feminist who attended several international feminist conferences. And at that time, it was eye-opening for her. And she writes about those conferences, that how much she learned and how much she appreciated the advancements and the rights that women from the advanced societies in Europe, she went to Paris in the International Conference of Women in Paris, in Rome, in Geneva, in Japan even, and in London. You should read the article that a British woman has written about her. Very interestingly Orientalist, but also very, it just shows you that how they were, what was the cliche and the stereotypes about an Iranian woman, a Muslim woman. There is an interesting dialogue between her and Sadiqa Dolatabadi that she writes, and it also shows how clever Sadiqa was, the way that she responds to her. To her and also to the officer in the custom department when she arrives in England. So the officer says, "You are coming from Iran? I thought a woman cannot travel alone in Iran. So how could you come alone?" And she says, "Yeah, some women can, and I made it." And then he asks, "So you must be one of the minorities in Iran. You are not, are you Jewish? Are you Christian? You can't be Muslim." She says, "No, I am a Muslim woman." And so that's another strange thing for the customs officer. And then, so what makes you so different? So just this simple, short dialogue shows that how people were ignorant about changes that were happening even then in Iran, and the stereotype was very negative and very one-sided. But anyway, but when she was attending these conferences, again, your point, going back to your point, there was a hierarchy of feminists, right? And the feminists, the hegemonic feminists, the feminists who were defining what feminism is all about, what should be our primary concerns, what are our priorities, all were initially set by white and European feminists. Inevitably, not that they had, evil mind or anything. So then they gradually understood, little by, because I have been attending the international conferences myself a lot, especially the world conferences of women in Nairobi and in Beijing. And I saw that how the learning was not both sides. Actually, not only third world women learning from the advancements that women of European countries or democratic countries had won. White women, and they had earned some rights that we didn't have. But they were also trying to learn from us. And where we are, what are the differences, what are the commonalities. So one of the first conferences that in the universities started to happen, the title was Commonalities and Differences, Third World Feminism, the challenge of third world feminism. There were many third world feminists in America, in Europe, that were challenging just one type of feminism of the white feminists or of the European feminists. So in other words, it was a matter of, learning and process of development of the literature, of the theories, of the interaction among the feminists from the third world, from the global south, global. Even the terms have changed because of globalization. We now don't talk about third world women, or we talk about global south, global north, and all that. So then today, feminism is like kind of borderless, and thanks to the internet, we can get together, network together, wherever we are, and communicate with each other, and avoid hierarchy and hegemony as much as possible. Not that everything is dandy and fine now. Okay, that was one. Anything else? Anybody wants to add any point?
Question.
Wait, let me other people speak since you have spoken. Yes.
Your experience and actually the thing that you told us about Sadiqa Dolatabadi. It's very interesting because it's the same experience we have even nowadays. You know, in international conferences and everywhere you go, as a woman from third world countries, actually, you consider somebody who has to learn something from them. And something that, of course, very many of us, I think we have problem is that, you know, you are always kind of marginalized in this kind of discussion because they think that it is a culture to be, you know, a second
natural.
citizen. It's natural. It is, you know, you have to go with the pace of your society. You shouldn't go ahead.
They teach us how to be patient.
And to be honest,
how to not complain about our
exactly.
system.
I'm shocked that, you know, even though in the best universities of the world, I hear this sentence even know that the thing that, you know, they told Sadiqa Dolatabadi, oh, really? You are not representative of Iranian women. We don't have this kind of Iranian people. And no, it was very interesting. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Yeah, it was fresh in my mind because I was working on it just before coming here. This post-colonial feminists who are white, mostly, and they feel guilty about what they have done in the past, and now they want to overcompensate for that guilt feeling. So now they are so nervous of criticizing any part of, you know, our cultures or any part of the. And when we criticize our cultures, when we demand our rights, our basic rights, they say, you're being played in the hands of imperialism. You are submitting to colonialists and things like that. They are just keep advising us about. Dr. Benon is going to talk about all that tomorrow. Yes.
Just continuing what Afro said, I wanted to also mention that when you were talking about the conferences you attended, for me it was very interesting because I thought, okay, perhaps it's emerging because I don't think that it is the culture right now. It's just the culture is still what Afro is saying. The culture is we are getting lectured about what we have experienced.
Right.
And if we say, okay, stop, let me say what I have experienced, we are radical. We are traumatized, and yet, you know, they are kind of like downgrading you with this kind of labels. Like I have talked with French women who are working in Saudi Arabia for the museums there, like improvement of the museum institutions, and then. When I'm saying like, oh, interesting, so, and we go to the women situation there, and I say, yeah, but, you know, Islam or this or that, they say, yeah, Iran is different, and then they say in a way that you don't know, and also I know better than you, and also you are too traumatized to have a neutral view over this subject. And this is something that I think we still have a long path to go.
Dr. Fazeli.
Thank you very much. My name is Ruja Fazeli from the Irish Centre for Human Rights in University of Galway. So thank you very much for the discussion so far. And, you know, it just makes me think of some anecdotal examples. When Afghanistan fell to the Taliban, I was at the time at Trinity College, Dublin. You know, I had colleagues who wanted to set panels. We were back to this whole narrative rhetoric of Afghan women need to be saved. And then Iran happened, the Women Life Freedom. So I went, the same people who had invited me to be on panels, I said, can we please have some panels on Iran? We can't. It's too political. This is Islamophobic. The number of times that they came back saying, but the narratives around women life freedom is Islamophobic. And I was like, at the time I was professor in Islamic studies there, Islamic civilizations. And I was like, I'm your only professor in Islamic civilization. And I tell you, it's not Islamophobic. Let me come and explain. They wouldn't budge. They wouldn't budge. And now Israel, Palestine, the war in Palestine, and it's interesting. So Ireland is a very different context. It's one of the only kind of European context where, you know, from the States to below is very pro-Palestine. But now the narrative on Iran has changed where you can't talk about Iran anymore.
You cannot.
Not in the same way, because again, it's like, well, the Iranian state is supporting Palestine. So it has become, so one of my questions actually to everyone here is, how do you work on Iran now, on human rights, on women's rights, in the face of what's happening in Palestine and Gaza, while showing solidarity, but at the same time criticizing, as we should, an authoritarian regime?
Yes, very good question. Before we change the topic, remember, Dr. Benini tomorrow is going to address the very questions you are asking. So I don't want to take away some of our, I want to leave the space for that discussion, some of it at least, or primary aspects of it to tomorrow. But Mansour Jan, I just wanted to everybody have a chance to. No, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, as a sign for me, as a first sign of transnational feminism in Europe, was the campaign of Me Too, because Me Too developed and growing up around the world, and now we saw that what was happening in Iran, and it was one of the best campaigns in Iran. However, there are some critic about it, but the Bidarzani website stood powerfully about this. It was something, as you mentioned, about the social media relationship, for example, as a basic reason to organize, to realize the transnational feminism. And the second one, as Roja said, it is about women's life freedom. A lot of organization, a lot of government, from EU to United States, looked at our state, our Iranian state, to tell their idea. But, for example, feminism in Turkey, feminism in Afghanistan, feminism in Mexico City, they support us. But why, for example, Me Too was successful to be a symbol like the transnational feminism, but about the Palestinian women, women's life freedom, or the women in Taliban, we were not succeeded to show our power and our strength about transnational feminism. What was the issue here?
Well, my answer to that is that it takes me back to the Nairobi conference. In Nairobi, the thousands of women came from mostly global south because they could afford to travel. When the conferences were held in Europe or in North America, it was hard for them to travel. More expensive. They couldn't afford it. But in Nairobi, we saw most of the participants were from Africa, from Asia, from countries that they could afford, and also it was just more diverse. But still, this was a time that Soviet Union still existed, and politics always, feminism, people who say, because one of the things that white feminists were saying, that's not a feminist issue. This is not a feminist issue. That is not a feminist issue. But then many people were there saying that poverty is a feminist issue. War is a feminist issue. All of these are feminist issues too. And so there was a division even then on the issue of Palestine and Israel. It's so divisive. It's a very divisive issue everywhere. As I can remember, there were divisions, especially among feminists. And mostly feminists coming from the Western countries were, many of them were Jewish. And at that time, many of Jewish feminists were very much Zionist as well. So they were ideologically defending Israel, not just politically. So there was division then even, not only now. And so there was a resolution that many women signed, but many groups and delegates signed, but many did not sign. The reason I mention this so that we know that historically this has been a divisive issue among feminists as well as other groups, like a student and so. But thanks to growing feminism and especially with intersectional understanding of it among Jewish feminists, among Muslim feminists, we have grown too, right? We also were very determined that whatever Palestine says or Palestinians do are right, because Iranians especially used to be very pro-Palestinians. And look how Iranians have changed now. They don't even want to talk about Palestinian human rights, as if they are not human beings. Why? Because the Iranian repressive and corrupt regime is supporting Palestine and has actually instrumentalized Palestine for its own purpose. And we know that when it came to the action, they didn't do anything. Iran is maybe the only Muslim majority country in the world that did not have any spontaneous demonstration in support of Palestinians. The government tried to have a government staged and, controlled demonstration. It was so weak, so small that it was embarrassing, right? So no spontaneous. Even people who are not for the government did not have a demonstration. Why? Because they were afraid it can be taken advantage of by the government. So the hatred and the resentment against the policy of the government, especially among ordinary people who say you are giving our resources. Remember the slogan, Na Gaza, na Lebanon, Janam Fadai Iran, no to Gaza, no to Lebanon. This was years ago. No to Lebanon, no to Gaza. I sacrifice my life for Iran, right? Because many people were taken to Syria, to Lebanon, many resources, many people died, Iranian people died in Syria fighting for Syrian Bashar al-Assad, for the Syrian government. So Iranians understandably are so fed up with the regime of Iran that whoever the regime of Iran supports, they extend that hatred, generalize that hatred to the oppressed people of Palestinian, and they don't make any distinction between human rights of Palestinians and Hamas as a terrorist organization. I personally consider Hamas a terrorist organization, a reactionary organization. It's not going to bring anything better or a solution for Palestinians. It was actually strengthened by the Israeli Mossad, and they kind of, to create division within Palestinians, they supported Islamist forces rather than the secular forces of Palestinians. So we know all that political history behind Hamas and behind this. And that is so unfortunate. It shows that still we have a lot of work to do among Iranians and even Iranian feminists, that if they really believe in human rights, they should go beyond borders, beyond states, beyond politics, and defend human rights, no matter what. Defend human rights of Israelis. That's why you condemn what Hamas did against innocent Israeli civilians. But at the same time, you can't just close your eyes to the atrocities that are going on in Gaza and in other places in West Bank by just killing every day innocent women, children, men. So unfortunately, these principles still have not been established in Iran, even among feminists. Some feminists really fail me. I mean, when I talk to them, I see that how shallow their excuses are. But I don't want to keep talking, sorry. Yes.
The idea
Yes, please introduce yourself.
My name is Mariam Shensakhan. I'm living in Germany, Munich. And the problem that you explained, how Iranian feminists can work also for women life freedom, showing solidarity with Palestinians, it's really difficult. And I wanted just to add, it's not a problem of just Iranian feminists, it's the problem of also liberal feminists. Also the Marxist feminist or social democrat feminist. Socialism. Okay. Exactly. It's a big problem of feminists to see Palestinian women as women. And I wanted just to add, it's not just an Iranian. In Iranian, it's maybe worse, but it's not just them.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rahat. I recently completed my PhD from the Institute of Sociology, University of Frankfurt, from here. When I was thinking about the discourse surrounding transnational feminism, and what something bothers me about the tokenistic representation of scholars from the global south, especially in the context of the global north, where certain individuals are put into certain editorial positions or in certain so-called academic positions, and the lack of discourse about those tokenistic representation among the feminist circles, and like how could this be addressed, and some of the people not talking about maybe for the sake of their own advantage or disadvantage, given if I'm like, for instance, very open about this tokenistic representation, I can lose my position, which I'm occupying in a certain institution. Something that needs attention. And the other question would be, it's not a problem with the transnational feminism, but feminism in general, the lack of inclusion of men in these discourses. Okay, it could be the reluctance of men joining these discourses, but maybe the hesitance of the dominant feminist groups having men in those feminist bodies. How could it be addressed? And like, there are time and again research shows that men inclusion is extremely important for gender equality, and it's the dream of having a gender egalitarian society could be a very shallow dream without engaging men for these discourses. So how transnational feminism in specific could deal with this problem? Thank you.
Anybody wants to address what that gentleman, I forgot your name, sorry, Rahman, said? Anybody wants to?
This is a very classic discussion in the feminist movement. How can we include men that we avoid the patriarchalism when they are with us? Because the experience feminist movement have that always when men came in, then the identity of our movement changed. Because men traditionally they are bosses. I talked to many women in different countries in my research, and all of them said when the men came in, they became a secretary for these men. That's why they tried to exclude them, because they couldn't have their own identity, their own ideas, their own struggle. That's why it became more and more difficult through time. But after these wars happened, I'm sorry if I take a long time, the international resolution like 1325, women included in peacemaking and political changes, they try to have men with them. And they have same experience again. And this is very new in this decade we are in last decade. And they had same experience. Women from Syria, from Palestine. I worked in Palestine for many years. I know the conflict very well. And I worked both with men and women in Palestine. And they had this problem all the time. They have same problem. They are under occupation. They both suffer from occupation, but they say we suffer from two sides. So occupation from Israel and our men.
Domination of
men in this discourse. That's why they try to exclude them and to have their own feminist movement. This is happening in Europe. In right feminist movement, you experience that too. They try to exclude men because every time men come in, we should be their secretary. They try to tell us what is our right. How we have to fight for our rights. And that's why more and more this tradition developed that a feminist movement is excluded. If they are there, for example, now we have a campaign. Some of our Iranian men said they will come in and be active in our campaign. But we were afraid to have them say, okay, we can have a side committee of men in our campaign, but we cannot have you in because we were afraid that our campaign will change. Everything will change.
Okay.
What we are started.
Thank you.
My name is Susan Rakhsh. I am a sociologist, and my expertise is women's movement in the Middle East or the old Middle East. No, I am in Norway.
Okay, just I wanted to add and kind of qualify a little bit also what Susan, right? Susan said, which I agree, and we had among Iranians we had the same problem, and we needed to have an independent women's movement. Initially, at least for several years, we wanted to have a safe space without any domination, without repeat of the cycle of, patriarchy that she mentioned. But at the same time, we had campaigns in Iran that were very successfully gender and cross-gender cooperation. Like the campaign of 1 million signatures, we had feminist men who were members of the campaign, and they were very successful in collaboration and very on equal basis. So it's not that always impossible to work with men. And also men should, like you, come and listen. They usually don't go to where women talk. They don't listen to women. They don't read the literature that feminists write. So the problem is two sides. I mean, we see the people that they don't, like my ideas have been used in the literature of men, but they don't give any credit. And many of our ideas we talk in, presentations. We don't necessarily always write it when they use the idea. They just steal the ideas, they use it in their writings, and you cannot prove that this idea was taken from home. Because in their culture, they don't take women seriously, and sometimes, there's an idea. They don't, sometimes even subconsciously they do that, right? They think that was my idea. So anyway, that is story everybody knows, and we have...
In the campaigns in Iran also, we had the same experience. And one of the reasons that we had the committee for men was because, not with even bad or devil will, but they still were kind of taking the opportunities from the women because all these kind of movements and campaigns are about also strengthening and empowering, especially young volunteers and young women to get to know things, to learn and to have self-confidence for self-expression and everything. But when men were there, they would kind of take the opportunities from women. And that's why even in 1 million signature campaign, one of the reasons that we had a committee for men was okay, you do what you are to do, and then we do what we are to do. Yeah. Be more supportive.
Right. Yes, we have another gentleman there that we don't want to miss. Then be accused of excluding men.
Thank you, Dr. Tawhidi. I'm Yasser Samimi, PhD candidate from the University of Warsaw.
Yes, Samimi, PhD candidate.
Yeah. Adding to what's said by Dr. Fazali, I would like to make some comments. Recently, we had a conference in Contemporary University about the decolonization in the Middle East, and one of the themes was abusing the decolonization. And interestingly, I was among the very few scholars that talked about the misusing or abusing decolonization, and I talked about how Islamic Human Rights Commission in the London is abusing the decolonization theory. And we know that it was actually this commission and Amelie, who was the head of the Iran Supreme Council of the Culture, who invented this idea of Islamophobia. So I think that we need a lot of more efforts and work to see that what was the political purpose of this concept of Islamophobia. So I'm working on it, and I welcome any scholars to work on it. And adding the lady mentioned here, we know that after the Islamic Revolution, many different type of the leftist scholars left Iran. They went to different countries and they become scholars. So most of the literature, because I wrote a PhD proposal for this on the women issue, we have a lot of literature on the 1 million campaign, 1 million signature campaign. We have a lot of, but we have very few literature on Islamist women. Maybe Azam Talabani maybe is an exception, not Iranian Islamist. If we go back to the 1990, we have in the UCLA, Hisa Nakanishi under the Professor Nikki Kedi, she wrote her PhD thesis on this topic.
Japanese scholar, you mean?
Yeah. And so she argues there in her thesis that many of the relatives of the politicians, like daughter and daughter-in-law of the Khomeini, Tabatabai, Fatima Tabatabai, and the daughter of Khomeini, and then daughters of the Rafsanjani, and then we know that many of them were relatives of the politicians, but I cannot see any arguments about their work, what Faiza Hashimi did in the international women issues. And my last point is that, for example, we have Ayatollah Taskhiri, who was an Iranian. Mm-hmm. He's mostly famous for the issue of the Tahrir. But very few scholars know that he wrote a lot about the women. But most of his literature is in Arabic. Mm-hmm. And he was the head of Iranian delegation to the Cairo conference in 1994. We know that the core of this conference was the women, and Taskhiri was the heading of the Islamic countries to be against abortion and against anything about the women. So fortunately, next week I will present another presentation about the diplomacy of Taskhiri, and today in my own panel, I will try to show them how the issue of the women is in the core of the Islamic human rights. Thank you, Doctor.
Okay, thank you for your contribution. But there have been women here, feminists, who have written about Muslim feminists. I myself have written extensively on Muslim feminists. I can speak. Okay, but we are talking about feminism here. You can go and criticize sociologists if they don't write about it. But here about those feminists who are also Muslim, and they try to kind of, bring them together, or at least interpret their Islam differently. We have been paying attention to them, and we are not dismissing them. Okay. Yes. Sorry, your turn. Finally. Okay. Thank you for being patient.
I wanted to ask something from you. Okay. Are you, any of you, about having any experiences with the new generation in Iran? I mean, the Z generation or Z generation. I mean about the men or boys. If they are the same as the old generation? Because you spoke about the excluding, because you spoke about the excluding them from the...
Right. I agree with Shirin.
I will give short answer. Then
please,
we will go
because
back
we have to move back
asked.
to our topic.
No, I should say, fortunately, this movement is changing our voice. Z generation is different, completely different with our generation and generation after us. Generation from 60s, 70s, 80s. This generation, with this, I call it woman life freedom manifest. This manifest is changing Iran. And I'm very, very happy for that. We saw that women lead this movement in last 2 years, and our young men supporting them. And this is very, very positive. I think the Z generation will change the culture of patriarchy in Iran. I cannot say that it's going to disappear. Patriarchalism is very, very deep everywhere. But I think our society is on change process. This is my opinion.
In the interval of 20 years or 10 years, and this is the good aspect of the globalization, as you said. But I would like to know the bad effect of side effect of this globalization.
Okay, that's again another subject. We need to go back. Sorry, like bad aspects of globalization. Globalization itself is a very huge subject. And there are a lot of bad things and good things about it that is not the subject of our session here. We decided, we had an agreement to talk about transnational feminism. The problem one of the problems in transnational feminism is the way the left itself has been divided. And the left itself, part of the left, I'm not going to generalize it to all leftist people, but the left that I think is fixated in like mid-20th century during the Cold War, that they divide the world into the America versus everybody else, right? And they're more anti-American than anti-imperialist because they don't say anything about Russian imperialism. They don't see China as Chinese imperialist policies. And they don't even realize that Iranian government itself has become kind of a mini empire by its own policies of domination, and is trying to create the Shia hegemony, and the rivalry is between Shia and Sunni hegemony of Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, they don't understand those things, or they're just reactionary leftists. A leftist can be reactionary too, unfortunately. So that is a problem. That's one of the challenges we are faced with. Post-colonial feminists, some of them are like that too. And so that's one, again, part of the discussion that Professor Benoon tomorrow is going to, in very articulate way, bring about. Yes.
Who are like in Iran case, I mean, like, is it something like exile feminism? Is it something like feminists who have left the country? Or transnational feminism is more about the idea that wherever we are connected and we can have dialogue?
As far as I can see it, no matter where you are, whether in Iran or outside Iran, you can have transnational cooperation with people. In Turkey, in America, in Afghanistan, and it's very important. We need to strengthen those networks, transnational networks between Iranian and Afghan women who have so many in common, right? And also differences. I know Afghan friends and scholars who say we can learn a lot from Iranian women because you are more advanced in terms of education. We have more literate women, and the women's movement is stronger in Iran than in Afghanistan. Understandably, again, I'm not giving any privilege here. We were, they were more unfortunate in some areas than us. So we are learning from each other, and they are also learning from. And we are fighting together. Sure. And we have common, in a lot of ways, we also have a gender apartheid system in Iran. Even though it's not as, clearly seen the way that Taliban's are, but basically the ideology is the same, right? They just divide people into two groups, men and women are deprived just because they are women of many social opportunities and rights.
Transnational feminism, as Nairajan explained in the first beginning, it's a networking, online networking. So there is no geography for this, as we said. And before that, for example, we have also the WILF, Nairajan, and then we in Iran, we started in 2008 to be a member of International Women's Museum, International Association of Women's Museum. And Iran was the only member of this network. So from that time, I was curious about how we can do the same, how we can find our communality. And it was the best experience for me, concrete experience for me. So we can extend it by internet or not. And about Palestine and Afghanistan, I want to say something. It was 2001. The Women's Cultural Center in Iran, maybe some of you in my generation know it. Yeah. And Nairajan was our, I can say, the first counselor. Mariam is here, one of the member of us. We decided to do something for Palestinian women. And we organized, look, it was 2001. Look. And we, Women's Culture Center, we were about maybe maximum 20 women, and gathered front of the Palestine embassy, symbolic one. Most of the leftist group, particularly men, kidding us, looking us, joking a lot. They made a demonstration, the same demonstration the government can organize. But they didn't say anything. 2 years later, it was 2004, 8 March, we made another one in the Park Lale to support Iraqian women because United States attacked Iraq. And it was our job, it was our commitment to a state for these women. Most of the people said, they are the side of for example, Saddam Hussein. Look, the polarization of our society between government and nation, between people, diaspora inside, between, for example, imperialism and non-imperialism. They are the obstacle to deny to form a transnational feminism over the ideology, over the government. We are for women in Palestine, Afghanistan.
Is there anybody who is dying to talk?
I just wanted to add something to that gathering in front of the Palestine embassy. Exactly, because I think sometimes the Islamic Republic is smarter because they know exactly where you are standing better than even some other activists. Because exactly the time that activists were under kind of criticism for being there, I think it was the same gathering that suddenly several motorcycles, like all these Lebas Shakhsiya, like forces of the Basij, they attacked us, and because we were all chanting for for peace. They started all shouting, Jang, Jang, the Piruzi, and then they arrested us. They arrested two of us at least, and also beat our activists. So I mean, sometimes it's very interesting how you are criticized or you are attacked by both sides.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Nicholas.
So I just wanted to cap off kind of the talk about Gaza. I saw in real time back in 2003 when I was going to Evergreen State College in Washington in the U.S., one of the most radical schools in the world probably. And that was right when Rachel Corrie was killed in Israel by a bulldozer. And I saw in real time how a lot of, especially women, were pushed to think kind of like, well, if you're an enemy of the American CIA or if you're an enemy of Israel, you're my friend. So a lot of people were pushed into siding with Iran or the IRI and similar groups, Hezbollah, Hamas. So I think the key thing, and something I was speaking with someone last night, is a lot of people in Iran don't realize that the narratives they're told about the U.S. are incorrect. And a lot of people in the U.S. don't realize that the narratives they're told about in Iran are also incorrect. So I think it's really important for women of Iran to be pushing the narrative that's counter to that. Like, just because the CIA says they're bad doesn't mean they're good. You know, two things can be bad. So that pushing of that narrative is really important, and sharing the narrative of what's happening in Iran so that women outside can really know.
And also we need journalists like you to write about that and clarify the issues for people. And as Dr. Benoon has written in her article, that oppressors sometimes oppress other people too, right? So not that oppressors are always like angels. We can all be oppressive, and we should realize and recognize that.